Welcome to the April 7th, 2010 meeting of the Municipality of Anchorage Platting Board. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Lendl Story. Steve Abel.
Here.
Ken Fuller. Ellen McKay.
Here.
Michael Krieger.
Here.
Anastasia Taylor. Jody Moses. Carol Stolpe.
Here.
Daniel Young.
Present.
The next item on the agenda is approval of action summaries. May I have a positive motion for approval of the action summaries listed in the agenda A through G? Mr. Krieger, is there a second? Mr. Young. That's what it says. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the action summaries are approved. Under, let's see, there are no minutes to be approved. Item C, special order of business. Are there any disclosures? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. One item on the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of all matters before the board that do not require a public hearing. All items shall be approved by a motion without debate. Does any board member wish to approve any item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, may I have a positive motion for approval of the consent agenda. Ms. Stolpe, is there a second? Mr. Young, is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is approved and the consent agenda, or the motion to approve the consent, never mind. The consent agenda is approved. There's no old business. But there is a matter that we need to discuss, and that is the fact that there are just 5 of us. There's a quorum, but according to Title 21, the code, that any action that we take requires the favorable vote of a majority of the fully constituted board, which means that it will require all 5 of us to agree. You need 5 positive votes for anything to be approved. So, that being said, there's on the back of the agenda, there's policy that went into effect January 1st, 2004, which states that if there is just 5, that petitioners will be offered to be moved to the next regular agenda in the hopes that there'll be more of us. And so I'm going to ask each one of you, as your case comes up, if you would like to postpone. And you will be able to do that till the next regular meeting, which is May 5th. Is that right? May 5th?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. So, new business. The first case is case S10625-10, Eagle Crossing subdivision. And would the petitioner like to take advantage of the postponement?
Madam Chairman, yes, we would. It'd be for this case and case B as well.
And your name?
My name is David Grenier, Triad Engineering, representing Driftwood Bay, LLC.
Okay, so that will be for case S10625-10, Eagle Crossing subdivision, and case S11496-4, Eagle Crossing subdivision.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Grenier.
Thank you.
That moves us to case C, case S11803-1, Abbott Loop Christian Center subdivision. Is the petitioner's representative here?
My name is Dave Titus. I'd
last name Titus, and I am the petitioner's representative.
And do you wish to postpone your case to the next meeting or be heard this evening?
We'd like to be heard this evening.
Okay, then.
Thank you.
That's fine, and we'll carry on with that. So could we have the staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a simple subdivision of one tract into three. The right-of-way dedication was resolved with all the relevant municipal agencies. This could not be handled as a short plat because it was platted just 2 years ago as a short plat, and one has to wait 4 years before they can have another short plat. But otherwise, this would be handled as a short plat. It's a very simple subdivision. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have. The department is recommending approval for the vacation of a 10-foot wide drainage easement that will be rededicated in a very close by location. And the department also recommends approval of the plat subject to conditions 1 through 12 on pages 6 through 8. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing and hear from the petitioner's representative.
We agree with the staff's recommendation for approval, and we have no issues with any of the conditions presented.
Okay, thank you. So you have almost 10 minutes for rebuttal, should you need it. Are there any questions of Mr. Titus? Would you like to use any of your rebuttal time for anything?
No, ma'am, I'm all done.
Okay, thank you. So we'll close the public hearing. And does anybody have any questions? Oh, I suppose I could have asked that, huh? Never mind. Okay. Is there anybody here that wishing to testify on, I'm opening the public hearing again, the Abbott Loop Christian Center subdivision? Anyone at all? Now we'll close the public hearing. Thank you. Anybody have any questions of staff? Okay. So may I have a positive motion? Mr. Krieger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the case S11803-1, move to approve the vacation of the 10-foot wide drainage easement.
And seconded by Mr. Young. Would you speak to your motion, Mr. Krieger?
Thank you. I intend to support the motion. The department indicates that the drainage easement will be relocated with the plat.
Any other comments? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the vacation is approved. Moving on to the plat.
In the case of S11803-1, move the approval of the plat for 18 months subject to the conditions 1 through 12 in the department's recommendation.
Is there a second? Mr. Young, would you speak to your motion, Mr. Krieger?
Also intend to support that. This is an uncontroverted and non-controversial plat. It appears to be well prepared.
Any other comments? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the plat is approved. Oh, that was easy. The next case is case S11802-1, Providence Chester Creek subdivision. Would the petitioner or the petitioner's representative please come forward?
Ken Ayers representing the petitioner. We will proceed tonight.
We'll proceed tonight. Okay, thank you. So could we have the staff's presentation, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a replat of existing Tract C1 Providence Chester Creek subdivision. It contains 9.71 acres. The preliminary plat proposes to create Tract C1A containing .62 acres and the remainder of Tract C1B containing 9.09 acres. The purpose of the plat is to create a road reserve, as noted on the preliminary plat, for acquisition by the municipality for the construction of East 40th Avenue between Piper Street and Lake Otis Parkway. In order to create this tract, which is 717 feet long and 44 feet wide, basically, two variances are required. One for the lot depth to width ratio and variance for reserve strips. The reserve strip variance is basically a prohibition on creating a strip that would prohibit access to a public right-of-way of privately owned property. Now, the purpose of this plat is to create a tract for which a public use easement will be obtained and for road purposes. So basically the standards for the variances appear to be met. They're basically temporary in nature because it is ultimately going to be a road, but they are required in order to record the plat. The department does recommend approval of the variances for the lot depth to width ratio, as well as reserve strips, and approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to 3 conditions that are on page 7 and 8 of the packet. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing and hear from the petitioner's representative, please. Mr. Ayers.
Hello, I'm Ken Ayers with Lonsberry & Associates. I'm the petitioner's representative, and also present is Tim Spurnack. He's the Trust Lands Resource Manager, and he's also available to answer any questions. We have no objections to staff's recommendations for approval, and would appreciate that approval tonight. There are a few items of clarification that we wanted to have read into the record under staff's comments and property history. And those would be as follows. On page 3, under property history, where it specifies a 30-foot right-of-way, that should be a 35-foot right-of-way. On page 4, and again, this speaks to the purpose of the plat, and the purpose of the plat is to separate this parcel so that the area can be acquired as a public use easement by the municipality for the East 40th Avenue Road construction project. That same comment would also carry forward to page 6 under variance request, the 4th paragraph, where it speaks to the purpose of the plat. Again, that's to be create the parcel so it can be acquired as a public use easement. And then on page 7, the 3rd paragraph, there's a duplication of terms here where it reads a public use easement will be provided and established. Provided should be eliminated. It will be established over the tract once the property has been acquired. And finally, the last comment there before the department recommendation is creating the tract will facilitate the acquisition of a public use easement for future extension of 40th Avenue. And that's all I had. Tim, did you have any comments?
No, that sums it up. Thank you.
We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Ayers? Seeing none, thank you. You have 10 minutes. You forgot to start the timer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We'll be glad when this meeting's over. Anyone else wishing to testify in case S11802-1 Providence Chester Creek subdivision? Anyone at all? Seeing none, do you care to use any of your rebuttal time? He indicates that he does not. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing. And could I have a positive motion on the case? Ms. Stolpe.
Madam Chair, I move for the approval of the variances from AMC 21.80.300.B, 1 to 3 lot width to depth ratio, and AMC 21.80.350 reserve strips for tract C-1A.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Young. Would you speak to your motion, please?
Yeah,
Ms. Stolpe?
I intend to support the motion based on the comments in the packet that we received.
Any other comments? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the variances are approved. Moving on to the plat.
Here we go. Madam Chairman, I move for the approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to items 1 through 3.
Is there a second? Mr. Young seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please?
I intend to support the motion for the same reasons as the previous motion.
Any discussion? Any comment? Seeing none, the motion passes and the plat is approved for 18 months. Which brings us to our last case of the evening, which is Lambert subdivision, case S11796-1. Would the petitioner's representative please come forward?
We have 3 representatives here tonight, and we wish to be heard tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the names of the representatives, David Thompson and Seth Startup, spelled S-T-A-R-T-U-P, with S.E. Granger Development Group, and Terry Irwin with Whipple Consulting Engineers.
Thank you. May we have the staff's presentation, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a preliminary plat to create 1 lot from 8 lots. It was formerly developed with parking lots, auto service garage, and a gas station. It is zoned B3 General Business District, and it is surrounded to the north, west, and south with B3 zoning, developed with commercial uses. R1A is located to the east across Seward Highway, developed residentially. This is basically a reversion to acreage of these 8 lots. The original plats were recorded in 1940. The property is located east of Gamble Street, south of Fireweed Lane, at the southwest corner of the Seward Highway and Northern Lights Boulevard intersection. One of the main issues for this preliminary plat has been the development on this site with adequate access and circulation. Now, both Northern Lights and the Seward Highway are owned by the State Department of Transportation. They own and maintain those roads. Therefore, the 2 proposed access points to the Seward Highway that is shown on the concept Walgreens plan that was placed on the table today. It's also in your packet, but this is a larger version. Those 2 driveway access points will have to be permitted by the right-of-way office with the State Department of Transportation. There is an access that is from the alley, and that is along the west property boundary, and that is an access onto East Northern Lights. Due to the median division of the Seward Highway, and one way going west. All these access points are right in, right out only. For that reason, project management and engineering, in order to really travel east and safely access the Seward Highway to be able to make eastern turning maneuvers on Benson Boulevard, PM&E is asking for the upgrade of the alley all the way from Northern Lights Boulevard down to Fireweed Lane. This will provide a safe access for people exiting the site, and Fireweed Lane at Seward Highway is a controlled intersection. That would require a subdivision agreement, which is also addressed in the conditions recommended for the preliminary plat. Basically, there was one of the big concerns of Alaska Department of Transportation has been queuing for a drive-up window. On the site plan, the drive-up window is going to be located at the northwest corner of the property, of the building rather, and so there is a through lane from the northeast driveway entrance to the site that will provide access to the drive-through window. I understand that the access point midway along the eastern property boundary, there is asphalt paving along that would connect to that drive-through window. The parking for the use is located on the southern portion of the site. The Q study, and certainly the representatives can much more adequately address this, but has done observation timing on other Walgreens in Spokane, and are confident that the queuing length will be adequate to accommodate 5 vehicles. The driveway along the potential driveway along the eastern portion of the building would also allow access to that through lane. However, the one concern of DOT, another concern of DOT is there are 3 angle parking spaces, and they are located at the southeast corner of the site. Now, these headlights will face a major intersection, and one of the conditions that is being placed on the plat at the request of DOT is to erect a fence or some site obscuring so the headlights do not shine on that major intersection. That also is addressed with a condition on the plat. There are number of utilities that have asked for easements, which is addressed in condition 1. Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utilities has some concerns regarding redundant water and sanitary sewer service connects that may have to be disconnected. That has to be resolved. And they also want a private system review. The PM&E would like a site grading and drainage plan. They also need a subdivision agreement to address construction of the alley, installation of drainage facilities, installation of utilities, reconstruction of existing driveways that will not be used so that they are rebuilt with curb, and will only be 2 defined driveway access points that the state has agreed to approve from the Seward Highway. There are notes and there are some drafting corrections. There is a condition to resolve internal circulation with the municipal traffic engineer. In conversations with the traffic engineer, I did request information that internal signage directing traffic and the internal traffic circulation does fall under the purview of the traffic engineer, and therefore under condition 3A and 3B, are based on comments from both the traffic engineer as well as the most recent comments that I received from the Alaska Department of Transportation last week, Friday on the 26th. And they still were requesting the need to relocate the drive-through window toward the southwest corner of the building. I have had conversations with the applicant's representatives. They may have more information, but that is the most recent written comment that I got from DOT, and so I placed that as a resolve with the DOT regarding the relocation of the drive-through window, because there seems to be some miscommunication on that particular issue. But I did have to address it because it was in a written form. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Are there any questions of Ms. O'Brien? Ms. Stolpe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. O'Brien, help me a little bit with the, please, with the drive-in window, the drive-up window. Is that on the south exposure of the building, south side of the building? I mean, the north, excuse me, the north.
Madam Chair, that drive-through window is when you is pictured, it's hard to tell, but it's a single-lane drive-through, and it is on the west side of the building, and it's at the northern corner of the west side of the building.
Okay, so it's right here. And the other question I have, Madam Chair, if I may, is I notice that you've got an in and out arrows in from the Seward Highway and then out, right in, right out. But the right out goes into a right turn lane onto Northern Lights fairly soon. And that's a right turn only lane. How is that being addressed? What are the discussions on that, please?
Madam Chair, I think that question, there is a traffic engineer from Whipple. Well, I think that's better addressed. I know that there have been conversations with the Alaska Department of Transportation that I have not been a part of, but I do know that DOT has accepted the driveway locations on Seward, and that is an alley. There is not a permit required, so any vehicle turning out of the alley to go west on Northern Lights, which is the only alternative, would have to take care of the turning lane. That alley exists. That situation exists now.
Well, maybe I'm just looking at this wrong, but on the Seward Highway, you're coming down the Seward Highway and you pass Walgreens, past the building, and then there's a right turn in, and there's a right turn out. And the right turn out is now in the right turn lane on the Seward Highway turning onto East Northern Lights. And that was the one I was asking about.
You mentioned Northern Lights, Madam Chair. When you were...
Did I misspeak? I beg your pardon.
Yeah, that's what...
Okay.
At least that's what I understood.
Okay. It's the Seward Highway. I understand about the alley. And I do have a question about that, but it's the Seward Highway. This car would then be turning into a right turn lane only.
Madam Chair, that's correct.
And so how does DOT address that issue?
I do not know. They've approved this driveway, though. I mean, they've improved it in theory. I wasn't privy to those discussions, and municipal traffic engineer isn't here tonight.
I have one other question, Madam Chair, and that is the alley. I understand, I read through the packet, and I understand how the alley is intended to be used and that it will be upgraded, but I never thought of an alley as being basically a road, a street, and that that seems to be how the petitioner wants to use it. I mean, I can understand the logistics of it. I happen to drive that area often, and so I'm familiar with it. But I wonder what the municipal code, I didn't think to look it up before I came, how the municipal code addresses the issue of a alley being used as a thoroughfare, because that's what it is. You're basically allowing a thoroughfare to go back down to Fireweed and come back up Seward Highway, and then if you want to go east onto Benson, on Benson.
Through the chair, an alley is a right-of-way. It cannot be considered the primary access or the primary, but an alley is a right-of-way. It's dedicated to the public, and it is used as a thoroughfare. Downtown, you see alleys being used as thoroughfares. So.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Krieger?
Just a thank you. Follow-up. Did the department do any studies to determine whether the amount of traffic that's going to be using that alley going southbound to Fireweed and then wherever they'll go from there, that the volume of traffic anticipated is consistent with an alley and a 20-foot alley with traffic coming both directions?
Madam Chair, the department did not do the studies. Perhaps the petitioners did. That would be their role in using the alley. But the department
But the department's comfortable in approving the construction of the alley to the standards that it's set here in these conditions, right?
The alley is recognized. It is recognized, Madam Chair, by the people that reviewed this preliminary plat that the alley would probably be used to access the traffic control device on Northern Lights on Fireweed Lane. Therefore, they are asking for an upgrade of that alley. Alleys are used for any number of things, such as access, deliveries. Loading docks are usually located from an alley if an alley is present. So that is the function of an alley. This is one of 3 access points to this property.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing, and could we hear from the petitioners?
Madam Chairman, members of the board, we'd like to take 7 minutes for comment and reserve 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Okay. So when that happens, the light will turn red.
Thank you. My name is David Thompson. I'm representing S.E. Granger Development Group. We're the applicant for the proposed platting here tonight. We've developed approximately 30 Walgreens stores in Alaska, Hawaii, Idaho, and Washington. Walgreens is headquartered in Deerfield, Illinois. In 2009, they surpassed 7,000 stores across the United States, 3 of them being the most recent additions here in the Anchorage area. S.E. Granger developed the store at the northeast corner of Diamond and Northwood, the southeast corner of Creekside and DeBar. We also acquired the property at Brandon and Huffman and initiated the rezone and entitlement process. The 4th site we're working on is the subject property here tonight. With me, as I said earlier, is Seth Startup, my associate with S.E. Granger Development Group, and Terry Irwin, licensed surveyor with Whipple Consulting Engineers. Seth would like to address one of the requirements, and then Mr. Irwin will clarify some of the other requirements tonight.
Good evening. My name is Seth Startup. We appreciate and generally accept staff's recommendations. The first 3 items we appreciate and agree to resolve the utility easements that is currently in the works, resolving the following Anchorage water and wastewater utilities, That is also in the works. Resolving the municipal traffic engineer questions as it relates to the driveway, access points, and circulation. That's an ongoing process that we've had with both the municipality and ADOT as it relates to the drive aisles. The access points, currently the site has 6 access points, and we're taking that down to 2 access points. The major issue that we have relates to 5A and the request to construct the alley from Northern Lights Boulevard to Fireweed Lane. Our general experience is that we improve right-of-way adjacent to our property, and usually it's half of the right-of-way, and the other half would be taken care of by the property that abuts the other side of the right-of-way. In this case, because it's a 20-foot alleyway that's adjacent to our property, we'd be willing to do it from Northern Lights to our northern parcel line, but believe and would like to get your input on whether or not it should be our responsibility to take it all the way to Fireweed Lane or not. And then I guess, and Terry can speak to a couple of the technical verbiage and language on a couple of the items.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, my comment basically had to do with item number 6, where we're being directed to show an 11-foot wide public use easement, and they're referencing a grid map. And I generally agree with that. I'd just like to change the wording a little if I could. After reviewing that with the state of Alaska, they do own that roadway and the right-of-way, and those are easements granted to the state of Alaska. So they would prefer the verbiage state of Alaska .puff right-of-way easement as opposed to public use easement. And further along in the first sentence, it says along the easement parcel, I'd like to strike easement and put east original parcel boundary. So it would call it to say showing the 11-foot wide state of Alaska .puff right-of-way easement along the east original parcel boundary. I think that would alleviate some of the questions that we had when we first reviewed this. And it follows, with that wording, it follows exactly the grid map that it's referencing, I believe. That is included in your packet, too, that grid map.
Sorry, I missed that because I was trying to find where you were. Could you repeat, please, what you...
Okay, it was, Madam Chairman, Madam Stolpe, that was item number 6 in the recommendations. And the grid map was... that I'm speaking of was on page 17 in your packet. So I would just like consideration of that rewording. And then the other item I have is on item 9B. It references note 5 in the title of survey sheet 2 of 2. And actually it has nothing to do with the plat. That is a sheet that was included in an ALTA survey that I did that was given to the municipality for information only. It has no bearing on the plat at all. And that's all the comments I had.
Thank you.
We have a little under 2 minutes left, and I'd just like to reiterate there are concerns, or I'm hearing some concerns tonight about the use of the alley, and our intent, as Seth mentioned, is to reduce the number of access points that are there now. There's currently 2 on Northern Lights. We're reducing that to none, provided we can use the alleyway as an access point. And that's our primary intent, is that point as an access point and also as a bypass lane for those people who are queued in the drive-thru and want to get out of the drive-thru and come to the front of the store to pick up their prescriptions. That's how we generally intended to use the drive aisle, and also for circulation for trucks for deliveries. That was the primary use, and that's part of the reason why we're asking for our improvements to be limited to the property that's adjacent to our property.
Thank you. So you actually have a little more. I mean, you have 3 minutes. Okay. 4? Anyway, 4 minutes. Are there any questions of Mr. Thompson, Startup, or Irwin? Mr. Krieger?
Thank you. I don't know if this is for Mr. Startup or Mr. Thompson. So I'll let you guys decide who
Fire away.
responds to it.
We'll pick and choose who.
The first one is this queue question. And as I understand it from my little map here, the queue is on the fireweed side, or what would be the south side, and it looks like there's a shaded area, and the less shaded area immediately adjacent to the footprint of the building is where somewhere in that where the queue is going to show up.
Permission to approach the...
Sure. I guess that's the chair's prerogative. But no worries.
Okay.
You can do it back there and then. Okay. All right. So Mr. Thompson clarified that the drive-in window is really going to be on the west side of the perimeter of the building towards the south, indicated.
Correct. The drive-through is on the alley side of the building,
right,
for simplest terms.
Okay, so I was thinking that the window was somewhere on the south side, but it's not. It's going to be on the west side.
No.
And so the queue is going to show up on the south side from traffic coming in off of Seward Highway and going around the corner and waiting to get their prescriptions filled. Did I get that right?
Actually, studies show that, generally speaking, you have typically 3 cars queued up at any one time for a drive-through. We have traffic studies where...
well, before you, I'm just trying to make sure I understand where
yes, see, what you're saying,
windows.
Generally speaking, the queuing would not... the queuing occurs on the north side of the building, north of the service area, and around the corner into the up to the drive-through lane.
Oh. Okay.
The south side of the store is the entrance of the store, and typically Walgreens, as an operational feature of their stores, they like to keep the pharmacy at the far end of the store for security reasons, because that's some of the most sensitive materials they carry in their store, and they want to keep that area very secure. So it's typically away from the entrance of the store. And the orientation of the store, of course, is to have the entrance up on facing south.
I'm getting more and more confused here, and maybe it's this map, maybe it's just me, but indulge me with a couple yes or no type questions here.
Sure.
The fireweed lies to the north of East Northern Lights, right? So the alleyway is going to go all the way to fireweed?
Yes.
Right? So traffic will turn back onto the alley, go to the north, and then hit fireweed, and then access one way or the other from there, right?
Possibly. We think those customers who want to continue eastbound on Benson will want to go up to the north, take a right onto Fireweed, take a right onto Seward, have enough time to get over in the left-hand lane, and at the appropriate time and turn left onto Benson.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of the petitioners? Ms. Stolpe.
Yeah. I guess I'm making an assumption that where exactly is that window? Is that window facing west?
Madam Chairman, permission to approach and point it out.
Okay.
You'll just circle it. Okay, that's what I thought. Finally, with Mr. Krieger's questions, I finally figured out. I guess I just made the assumption that then the cars would continue around the building, but could they peel off then and go into the alley?
Go ahead. if you want.
Yeah, in leaving the drive-through, if a car was to come in off of Seward, they would access along the north side of the building, turn left into the drive-through, and exit the drive-through southbound in the alley. That's correct. We did a traffic impact analysis with our traffic consultant, and all these concerns were raised with, it was brought to the municipality's attention originally. Municipality transferred it to ADOT because it directly impacted the driveways, and so we've been working with Scott Thomas. He's been provided the traffic impact analysis. They've done numerous tests on what they believe the queuing will end up like at the end of the day based on current 7,000 plus Walgreens. And his recommendation is that he's okay with it, he being Scott Thomas. They reserve the right to close that access point in the future, which is a right that they have regardless of whether or not they state that. So if there are problems with the queuing and ADOT elects to close that access point, that is a right that ADOT currently has.
Okay, Madam Chair, if I may. Okay, so a vehicle comes into the parking lot from the Seward Highway, and do they then turn right and go along the Seward Highway side of the building and come around on the fireweed end of the building, or the other way around?
Madam Chairman, are you talking about the north access point on Seward or the southerly access point on Seward? There's one that's north of the loading queuing area for the drive-through, and then there's one at the southeast corner of the building.
If someone's coming along on the Seward Highway,
Okay.
and they turn in right at the corner of the south corner of the building, the southeast corner of the building.
Yep, okay. I follow you.
Okay, and so are they going to then turn right and go down along the building, paralleling the Seward Highway?
Yes, to access the drive-through, that would be a one-way northbound drive aisle.
Okay, and then they turn right, then they turn left, and they come around the next corner.
And make a left into the drive-through, correct?
Right, and then they stop there, and then they get their prescriptions.
Yes.
And at this point, they can then do a U-turn and go down the alley towards Northern Lights, towards Fireweed?
As it stands today, correct. They can make a right into the alley to go north on Fireweed, or they can proceed south in the alley to proceed to Northern Lights.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Krieger?
Yeah, now I'm on the, back to the alley. Did anybody do any studies to determine whether or not what the traffic volume would be of people trying to get northbound through the alley to Fireweed?
We've addressed the trip generations with Walgreens before on previous sites, and we have written statements from the traffic department that the Walgreens store typically does not trigger levels of trip counts that are higher than an average that requires a TIA. So typically a TIA is not required. The uses we are replacing here were a gas station, convenience C-store, an automotive parts store where they customize
AutoStart Alaska.
Yeah, AutoStart Alaska, and I'm not sure if there's a third use that we...
That was
Those are the two primary uses that we're replacing. So we're assuming that, of course, they did generate some trip counts, and there was some use of the alley for those clients that already existed.
And these are, as we said earlier, that we like that number 3 is left at resolve the following with the municipal traffic engineer, because clearly there's some items that are in the process of being resolved both with ADOT and the municipality.
Well, I think that addresses my question, but I have to tell you I'm not persuaded that the municipality should back away from its intention to have the alley constructed to 20-foot wide strips, and that remain the responsibility of the petitioner. just because it's my expectation, and that's, everybody's got their own little opinions, I guess, but it was mentioned in the packet that there was a concern about how people getting into that Walgreens are going to go back to the east. With the convenience store and the gas station, I don't suspect there was that much traffic going in there for people who wanted to then turn around and go all the way back to the east on Northern Lights or Fireweed. So I'm not persuaded, just a heads up, that the condition 5A should be changed. And if you want to address that any further, this would be a good time to do it, I guess.
Now or during the rebuttal, Madam Chair?
Well, we might as well wait. Maybe there's some comments from the public that would be brought up too.
Mr. Young.
Through the chair, Mr. Irwin, I was listening to your comments on number 6, but I didn't write them down. So I was a little slow. Can I impose?
I'll do shorthand. Yes. Madam Chairman, members of the board, what I was asking is to clarify some of the language on item 6, because I believe they meant east parcel boundary instead of easement parcel. So I was proposing that it would read, show the 11-foot wide State of Alaska .puff right-of-way easement along the east original parcel boundary.
One more time, please. State of Alaska.
State of Alaska, DOT and PF, right-of-way easement along the east original parcel boundary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak in case S11796-1? Anyone at all? Seeing none, the petitioners have 4 minutes, is that right? 4 minutes for rebuttal.
Just to answer Chairperson Krieger's comment and question, essentially our position is, first of all, from our property to Firewood Lane is 445 feet of alleyway. Along there are 5 owners besides our subject property who utilize that alley. And we believe that if they are gaining access and benefit to that alley, it should not be our burden alone to improve that alley beyond the condition that it's in today. And we would be willing to work with some sort of limited improvement district. We just do not believe that it's fair and equitable to require that length of alley to be the responsibility of one property owner to improve. Seth, do you have anything to add?
That's basically it in a nutshell.
And just another reason, we debated tonight about whether we were going to bring up our traffic engineer to address some of the issues tonight, and I think some issues have been addressed tonight, but our understanding and interpretation of the plat here tonight was that most of the traffic issues are issues to be resolved with the departments. Much of that legwork we've already have negotiated with. We brought some documentation tonight for supporting some of the pre-negotiated design elements we've worked out with the Alaska Department of Transportation. And our understanding of the plat tonight was that those issues are to be worked out and finalized with the appropriate departments and weren't an actual contingency of the plat approval.
Ms. O'Brien, I guess, is next.
Questions for the petitioner? Unless Ms. O'Brien had... Ms.
O'Brien had a comment, I believe.
Madam Chair, I did have a question. For clarification, I wanted to ask it while we were on item number 6. The east original parcel boundary, what do you mean by original? The original 1940 plat boundary? I need clarification on that.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Bryan, my intent there is to alleviate the understanding that that 11 feet would be from the boundary that I've shown in the preliminary plat, because the preliminary plat that I submitted actually had the east boundary as the same line that the 11-foot would create if you went 11 feet from the original east parcel boundary. And original, I mean the original plat boundary.
That means the 1940 plat when it was originally platted.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Krieger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Thompson, I understand the equity argument about there being 5 other property owners on this alley between East Northern Lights and Fireweed, and I assume that they are to the west, like that Midas shop that's on the corner, or on the fronts on Northern Lights, and apparently there's some others going further to the north. However, if that 5A condition is dropped, that would put us into a limbo where there basically would be nothing accomplished there in terms of upgrading of the alley, and it would be then, I assume, somebody's obligation, private or public, to try to form an LID to do some improvements to it. So I don't see that happening. So I'm still sort of back in the realm where, notwithstanding the absence of a TIA, there is a lot of attention directed in the packet to what to do with the east, how to get people back going to the east, and I'm sure some people would come back on East Northern Lights and go down further to the west and then make a U-E and come back on the on East Northern Lights, but there could be a lot of people who want to go the other direction. Have you done a cost study to determine how much the improvement to that alley standard would cost the developer or the owner?
Regrettably, the first time we were made aware of this condition was when the proposal came out last week. So we haven't it's not budgeted as part of our original budget for the development of the project. We have rough estimates where we think that's potentially $75,000 or more, depending on what the design guidelines require of that alley improvement. I guess part of my concern is that at Creekside and DeBar, where we developed our Walgreens store, the Alaska Village, combination of MCI and Cook Inlet Housing were obligated to build Grass Creek Road, which was a small road that connected from Creekside Center Drive around back to DeBar. And I was we needed the actual approval of that road before our project was complete, and our project was done, constructed, and we were waiting for the municipality to finally sign off on Grass Creek Road. So I became very aware of how stringent the standards can be for developing a road, and we haven't done a cost analysis of what it's going to take to improve an alley, but we did not budget for going north of our subject property.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, may I speak to the alley?
Certainly.
During our research with WCE, we looked at the alley, and my familiarity with traffic in that area was if you were to go north on the alley, the only way it could reasonably go would be southbound again, because as you approach Fireweed from the south, there's 3 lanes. One turns south, one goes straight, and then one turns left and goes north. So once a person is used to that neighborhood, they're going to proceed down Northern Lights to Gamble, and then they're going to go north on Gamble. That way they've got a whole block to get in whatever lane they want, whether they go south or north or straight. So I think the alley will be used maybe for a while until people educate themselves. And I think after they educate themselves, I think they'll go to Gamble and go that way north.
Mr. Krieger?
I have no other questions. I have a question for staff, but...
Are there any other questions of the petitioner? Ms. Stolpe?
I've been debating about whether or not to comment until we get to board comments, but to be fair, just before your participation ends, I happen, just by a weird coincidence, to use that alley at least once a week, sometimes more often than that. I've never seen any other traffic on that. It gets plowed, sort of, and I know that there are a few other businesses, but I don't see any traffic. And I'm there through the daytime, various times through the middle of the day. I don't see anybody else using that. Not the people that are using the, is it the RAM building there, the office building, and where the Division of Elections is, and Guardian Security backs up to that alley. They front their business fronts on Seward. I'm trying to think what else is back there, but I've never seen any other traffic on that alley. So the point I'm driving to, I'm sure you can see, is that that alleyway, and I think Mr. Irwin makes a good point that people will, come to use Gamble, which is just not very far away, and then turn right onto that. And I would correct you that the middle lane for approaching the Seward Highway on Fireweed, by the way, is a left turn or straight, and then one lane is left turn, and then the other lane is right turn only. So that may be the case, but just because we're having this discussion, I just feel it's fair to say I've never seen any other car moving on that alleyway, and I take it from Northern Lights almost all the way to Fireweed. So,
any other questions of the petitioners? Seeing none, thank you very much, and I guess we'll close the public hearing.
Thank you for your time.
Right. The matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Oh, that's right. Excuse me.
Well, Mr. Krieger had a question first,
right,
and then I have
I have a question for staff, if it's my turn.
Question for staff.
Sorry to drag this out, but through the chair, Ms. O'Brien, a couple easy questions and then maybe a little bit harder one. Do you have any trouble with deleting 9B? One of the speakers indicated that he thought that shouldn't be on the plat.
Madam Chair, Mr. Krieger, no, I don't.
Okay. That was easy. On 6, do you have any trouble with the, what if we said showing the 11-foot wide State of Alaska DOT right-of-way along the east original 1940 parcel boundary? Does that work, or is that getting too?
Well, that clarifies it, because I did discuss this with the Mr. Irwin, and the current grid map shows 11 feet from the boundary that exists today. That's why I needed to know, is there an error in the way it's shown on the grid map? And I needed to know, what do you mean by original boundary? Because that boundary did change since 1940 when this was originally platted. So that was a clarification I needed. And the board is more than, has the option or the, can put that in there for clarification purposes.
So what would the department, what would the department's position be if that recommendation were changed in the way either Mr. Young wrote it down or with the 1940 added to it? Do you have a problem with that if we were to tweak it that way?
Madam Chair, Mr. Krieger, I have no objection to adding 1940. I think it's good clarification.
And one more question. This is the harder one on this constructing the alley. Would it be reasonable to take 5A out of 5 and make it a new condition that said something like, resolve the need with private development, PM&E, to construct an alley? My intent would be, if that were the change, to allow the municipality and the petitioner to discuss whether or not an alley upgrade is needed there, and if so, who ought to do it, and leave the rest of B, C, D, E, and F in 5, but then move that other part to something that had resolved the need in front of it. Just a thought, and I wondered if you could react to that.
Madam Chair, Mr. Krager, I think maybe another alternative for your consideration is to leave it in, because it does have to be done under a subdivision agreement, but to amend it to read construction of the alley, and then just taking out from Northern Lights Boulevard to Fireweed Lane. So it would read construction of the alley to alley standards, it should be 20-foot wide strip paved alley with 2 10-foot lanes and inverted crown, comma, the length to be determined, to be resolved with PM&E. The length of the improvement to be resolved with PM&E.
That's far better than what I was trying to do.
It still remains within the subdivision, Madam Chair, Mr. Krager, it still remains within the subdivision agreement requirements, but it does allow the opportunity to investigate a joint improvement effort.
So did I hear you right, the length of which to be resolved with PM&E? Was there anybody else that to be mentioned there?
Length of improvement.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Ms. Stopey. Yeah, the length of the improvement to be resolved with PM&E, and if you wanted to include traffic, as they are now negotiating with traffic on a number of items, maybe that could introduce, the parties that are actually working to resolve all of the access issues surrounding this development.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions of the staff? Now, seeing none, may I have a positive motion in this case? Mr. Krieger.
In case S11796-1, Lampert subdivision, move to approve the plat subject to conditions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, with the change of 5A to read, to insert a comma after the word crown, to delete the words from Northern Lights Boulevard to Fireweed Lane, so it would then read, construction of the alley to alley standards, 20-foot wide strip paved alley with 2 10-foot lanes and inverted crown, comma, the length of which improvement to be resolved with PM&E and traffic. Changing condition 6, however, changing 6 to read, showing the 11-foot State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities right-of-way easement along the east original 1940 parcel. Conditions 7, 8, and 9 with 9B deleted.
Is there a second? Ms. Stolpe seconds. Would you speak to your motion, Mr. Krieger?
I will support the motion. I think that we've hashed it out fairly well here, and there seems to be a reasonable argument as to why it might be onerous to require the alley to be rebuilt in that way, and we'll let the PM&E and traffic folks make their case, from my perspective at least. So I'll support the motion.
Any other discussion? Ms. Stolpe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to support the motion, and I'm really appreciative of Mr. Krieger and others working to resolve it, because with a short board like this, I was feeling a heavy weight to say no. And I really wouldn't want to do that. I'm excited to have Walgreens back in Anchorage, and I think it's good all the way around for the community. I am concerned about the alley, but I think the way the motion read, as amended, as Mr. Krieger amended it, is going to serve us well.
Mr. Young.
Thank you. I have a question on the motion. Are you intending to leave number 9B in or remove that condition?
I thought I carved it out in the motion.
Thank you. My mistake.
Any other discussion? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the plat is approved. And that ends the new business portion of the agenda. No persons to be heard, no reports on the agenda. Board member comments.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Stoppe.
Thank you. I do have a number of comments to make.
Madam Chair, could I, there's a gentleman in the audience that has a question. He raised his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, excuse me.
Certainly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appeared before this body.
Could we have your name, please?
Yes, B.G. Hanaway, Hanaway. I appeared before the Platting Board in reference to this item dated 6 May 2009, where the city was and still is in trespass on my property with a 12-inch water main running 340 feet on my western border. I met with Mr. Keever and his staff and several of the right-of-way, traffic, etc. on November the 24th to resolve this right-of-way issue. I maintain you could leave your water line in place. You don't have to move it as long as I get vacations of the section, the line easements on my southern and eastern border. Mr. Keever's rebuttal to that was to take Driftwood Bay, bring it up to my southern border, around the corner, and exit to Ptarmigan Boulevard on my eastern border, which I did not and do not want today. So, we are in complete disagreement. Nothing has been done to my knowledge, and I would like to comment on this case that appeared before you earlier, 11946. It's my understanding that with the Eagle River Community Council, we had worked out a compromise to give the emergency access to Eagle River Road through Ptarmigan all the way down to Eagle Crossing subdivision. But the requirement was that the road be gated. Fire department, I understand, objects, and I would like some clarification if anybody has any information regarding this objection. The reason why we want it gated We have constant problems with garbage dumps being dumped below Ptarmigan Creek, which exits on Eagle River Lane, south of Ptarmigan. We have kid problems, night and day, used condoms, syringes, trash, people sleeping overnight in their cars. The only way to control it at this time is to maintain 2 gates. Right now, there are large rocks blocking the road, no access. We're not saying that the fire department can't have access. They can, but only with a gate. And I would like, as soon as possible, this trespass of that water line on my property solved. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. It's just that as the Platting Board, this is a case that was postponed for this evening. And because it was postponed to the next meeting, which is in May the 6th, 7th?
7th, I think it is.
May 7th.
May 5th.
May 5th, I'm sorry. It's been postponed to May 5th, and because it was postponed, we can't discuss that case this evening. It's a public hearing, and it needs to be open to the public, and the public needs to be able to come when it's.
Yes, I was not aware that it had been postponed to May 5th, 2010.
The beginning of the meeting, the petitioner's representative took advantage of the fact that there was just a short board and postponed the case again until May 5th.
May 5th. All righty. I might add that of the mailings that went out, I understand that there's something over 1,000 mailings that went out from the city, these blue flyers, and there's only been about 7 responses. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, I don't have the file with me, so I can't count the responses, but responses come back through the mail, but they also come back online, through the website, and those are responses. And they come back as letters. I don't have the count of the responses with me tonight.
Yeah. I was not aware that this thing had been postponed. My hearing is not that good. But you remember last year, on May 6th, when I appeared, I asked you specifically if this is going to be recorded and printed out. I'm having problems with Eagle River Valley Community Council getting my comments recorded, not only with the past president, who is Bill Starr. The current secretary lives in the Eagle Crossing subdivision, and it's been a railroad to get this road punched through, regardless. And this is the same thing that I told you last year. Spinelli, who was the previous contractor, indicated to one of my neighbors he didn't give one damn about what our concerns were the road was going through. Now then, they punched it through, they knocked down trees, they took 20 feet of my property down to water level. And this is a major concern of all of our neighbors, water. I believe it's AUFEIS, that means that water, groundwater, freezes, comes out of the ground and freezes and causes major damages. But I'll discuss that with you on May 5th. I thank you for the time and effort, and I appreciate it, because we cannot get an answer, a straight answer. If the emergency road is going to go through on Eagle River Lane, we want that gated, period, to stop the mischief that goes on. If it's not going to be gated, then we want a fire department statement that they'll clean up the mess. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanaway. Mr. Young.
Madam Chair, Mr. Hanway.
We're not open on a public hearing, are we? Point of order, I guess, Madam Chair.
Mr. Young?
Does Mr. Young's comments go to substantive issues? If they do, shouldn't they be postponed to when we actually are receiving public testimony on this matter, other than clarifying to the public that this matter isn't before the board right now? I don't know what else we could do. That was my point of order.
I agree.
I'm sorry.
I agree.
I'm sorry for interrupting you.
I wanted to, no, that's fine, and I appreciate that. I just want to acknowledge your patience for sitting through this tonight. It seems like there's two issues. One that is coming up next month, and then there's the one with the potential trespass. And I don't believe this is the venue to resolve that, and I wanted to ask staff for Mr. Hanway what the procedures he should pursue for that.
If it's trespass on private property, it would be the police department, but if they're using a dedicated right-of-way, that's public, and people, I don't know what the issue would be on that. I don't know where the litter is occurring.
I might add that my subdivision was put in, the patent was granted in 1950. On one of the few lots that was broken out in 1952, which predates statehood. And there is no right-of-way on my western border. And when Mr. Spinelli appeared on my property with two police officers informing me as to what they were going to do, they went ahead and did it. And why I am so incensed about this is they dug a portion of my wife. They dug her up and hauled her off. She taught school for 42 years, a special ed teacher, a BS, a BA, and a master's, with 63 hours ready for her PhD, and the only reason why she didn't go after her doctorate's degree is they would remove her from the classroom if she got her doctorates. She passed in 1989, and I scattered her ashes at her request along the borders of this property. Now then, Spinelli and Company, in concert with the city, dug 25% of her up and hauled her off to God knows who knows where. And I am PO'd about it. I'm sorry to use strong language, but I have difficulties getting my point across the Eagle River Road. The Eagle River Valley Community Council, headed up by Bill Starr and his secretary. It's been a conspired effort to drive this road through at all costs, regardless of what it is. I have been damaged. And I only ask that an emergency access be granted to the fire department, that it be gated so that we can have a little peace. Because there's been all kinds of problems with that road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanaway.
Any more questions?
No, we're fine.
Madam Chair.
Hang just a minute. Just a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, board member comments. Ms. Volpe?
Yes.
Follow that.
I'm ready for a beer if you want to. I do have some brief comments that I wanted to make, and I had intended to make them this evening, and they have to do with the memo that we received from the staff referencing the questions that were asked at the last meeting during board comments. And I'm sensitive to the fact that the petitioner is not in the room, so I will be cautious about not say anything substantive. In the first sentence, I think it's important to have the record remain clear that the February meeting was not postponed due to a short board. February meeting was postponed because a petitioner did not notice the meeting. So that's a responsibility of the petitioner, as I understand it. And I think it's important that that be corrected.
Where are you?
There was a memo that was attached to F1B, and the first sentence under Eagle River Crossing S-11496-4.
Oh, okay, I got it.
See that? And it says it was due to a short board at each meeting, and that's not factual.
Okay.
And then the question regarding a positive motion, and that's addressed somewhat in this. But the question that I have, and I don't know whether we can address that this evening or not. I don't want to run afoul of the rules. But the last sentence in that first bullet states, if a motion to approve the request fails, which was the question, if a motion to approve the request fails, the subdivision agreement is then in default as to installation of the emergency access. The way I understand it, in fact, the petitioner is already in default because the petitioner was required to have this work done by October 1st of 2009, and it is not done. So that's an issue I wanted to bring up. Going on to the next bullet regarding the responsibility of the Chugiak, Birchwood, Eagle River Rural Road Service Area to complete the construction of Eagle River Lane. And then it goes on into the next paragraph. My memory may be faulty, and I certainly would appreciate it if someone would point it out to me, but that's the first time I've heard that there have to be funds from a state grant to complete Eagle River Lane from Ptarmigan Boulevard to Eagle River Road. And I have to say I was taken aback by the next sentence, which says that CBERRSA was not able to obtain the funding during this legislative session, when in fact this was, I expect, written about halfway through the legislative session. So just as a point of information or comment, I guess. And then concerning the next bullet, and that had to do with my request for information regarding the liability assigned to the municipality should there be, God forbid, a serious accident. There are a couple of things about that I just want to comment on. I don't necessarily expect a response, but I just want to comment on it. For one thing, I thought we would be receiving a legal opinion from the municipal attorney's office with a signature on it that would say who authored it. In my experience, which I think has been considerable in these matters, that's what I had come to expect, and that's what I would have expected from the municipal attorney's office, rather than what appears to be a paraphrasing of what I think might have been just a discussion and not a written opinion on this matter. And I was a bit taken aback by the last sentence, which reads, last sentence in that bullet, that same bullet, at the top of page 2, which states, in consultation with the law department, the planning department was advised that it is in the best interest of the public to support the petitioner's request. Now, there's two problems I have with that. And the first one is that I thought that was our job, to decide what's in the best interest of the public regarding matters before the Platting Board and not the Department of Law. And secondly, if they were going to decide, if their opinion is that it's in the best interest of the public to support the petitioner's request, I guess I would have expected that we'd have something in writing that would tell us what that is, just how we're supposed to do that. So that's really all I have to say on this. This has been a difficult issue for this board to deal with, and we've now 3 months into it. It's going to be 4. I don't know what the resolution ultimately will be, but time goes by, and the issue hasn't been resolved for a number of reasons. So I thank you, and I thank the board for listening.
Mr. Krieger.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to the board for another opportunity to address. And I appreciate Member Stolpe's comments and the care with which she has addressed that memo. I had a couple other comments that I might offer for whatever. In the first bullet point, there's an error in the second sentence where it says that we approved a time extension requiring the interim emergency access standards to be completed by 2009. The issue was the completion of the road. We're not involved in creating standards. We specifically required that that road be done by October 1st, 2009. I think that we shouldn't dilute that recommendation or permit the dilution of that recommendation by a reference to completion of standards. I noticed in the first full bullet on the second page that the director advises us that the petitioner's engineer and the municipality are striving for plan approval by April 30th, 2010. And I would comment that I hope that the petitioner's engineer and the municipality take advantage of this, of the petitioner's request for a postponement to obtain that plan approval prior to the next meeting. And then in the last sentence, there's a statement that the petitioner and the municipality have reached a cooperative agreement to provide the second emergency access this construction season. I would like to see that agreement, if it's in writing, because it seems to be inconsistent with the second bullet point that says if we rejected this application, then would the municipality build the road? And the short answer we got was no, the municipality is not going to build the road. But here we're being told that the municipality has reached an agreement with the petitioner, which would in fact construct that access. So with all due respect, if the intent is that the municipality believes that it has obtained good faith assurances from the petitioner that they're going to do what they say they're going to do, then we should clarify that rather than represent that there is some agreement between the municipality and the petitioner to actually construct it. And if there is an agreement where the municipality is committed to do something if they fail, if the petitioner fails again, I think that would be significant, and I'd like to see that. Thank you for humoring me with my comments.
Are there any other comments?
I have just one brief request, please, Madam Chair.
Ms. Stolpe.
And I would request that Mr. Krieger's comments and my comments be reported verbatim in the minutes, please. Thank you.
I did have one other thing that I forgot to mention. Just a typo in the agenda, and maybe we could correct it the next time. In the notice on this new business, it says under the request, it uses the to urban standards by October 1st, 2011. And I think that what we are amending is the requirement to urban standards by October 1st, 2009, if I recall correctly. Ms. O'Brien, you're shaking your head. Didn't Didn't we have a requirement to complete that? Oh, you're distinguishing between the road and the urban standards, is that, so it's not an error?
No, the way it was originally approved, the last approval was, we do need to specify interim emergency standards. That's what was required by 2009.
Yeah.
And it was interim emergency standards, not the full urban standard.
Thank you. I stand corrected. Thank you.
Any other comments? Motion to adjourn. Oh, wait.
Move to adjourn.
We're adjourned. Well, that was fun.